Strength Warehouse presents Go Heavy or Go Home podcast. I am your host, Nate Boley. In this podcast, we talk about strength, fitness, nutrition, and all things Strength Warehouse related. Hey guys, welcome back to the podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about powerlifting. Love powerlifting, right? That's my jam. That's what I'm doing. I'm a referee, I'm a meet director, I'm a lifter. I love everything about powerlifting. So, in today's episode, I wanted to go over that. What is powerlifting? Well, powerlifting, in a nutshell, is 3 compound movements: squat, bench, and deadlift. Now, there's an argument out there that says, I've heard people say, you're not a powerlifter unless you've competed on the platform in competition style. I would disagree. So you can train exactly like a powerlifter and not compete. I feel like you're still a powerlifter. But do I believe that there's a certain element of competing on the platform in competition that drives you a little bit more? 100%. So I can see the argument, but in my heart, in my brain, you can still be a powerlifter and not compete, but I don't know why you would. I would just say, hey, get out there and do it, because you don't have to compete against other people, maybe eventually, but the first few times you're out there on the platform, you're just competing against yourself and having a great time and having some kind of goal to get to. And that's why you're training, right? Having something in your training that you're looking forward to is going to help you become better. And that's all we're really looking for. So, what kind of programs are out there for powerlifting? There is so many programs out there. It's unreal. And in the past, I've been in the powerlifting world since 2009. That's not a terribly long time, but it's a long time. I've seen so many programs come up and so many fly-by-night coaches and Instagram this and Instagram that and TikTok this, whatever. There's some great new things out there, but you can get it all done with just some basic old school stuff as well. Not to say that anything that you're doing isn't good. I'm just saying, there's tons of stuff out there: bars, plates, equipment, gyms. Is it necessary? No. I did powerlifting for a ton of years in just a regular box gym. You can squat, bench, deadlift. Now, when I opened up my garage and started Iron Pit Powerlifting, which was the very first iteration of our gym, in our garage, we had deadlift bar, we had a monolift, we had a competition bench press. Did my powerlifting get better? Absolutely. When I was with like-minded individuals, I was in a regular gym doing powerlifting with like-minded individuals. We switched over to my garage. It got better. Why? Because the equipment was better. So, do you need certain equipment? Yes. Is certain equipment going to help you get better? Yes. Is it necessary, 100% necessary to compete or be good? No. And that same thing with programming. You can just do a basic linear progression where you're going to go from more reps, less weight, to heavier weight, lower reps. That is the foundation of powerlifting. Is there other things that are going to make you better? Yes. Are they absolutely 100% necessary to make gains? No. So I would just say, that being said, you can still powerlift and do very well without all the flashy bells and whistles. Is it going to make you better in your life easier over the long run if you have all those bells and whistles? Yeah, potentially. All right. Coaching. This is where it gets a little bit crazy. So I coached, the very, very first couple years I was in powerlifting, I had not really a coach, but somebody who thought they were a coach, and they were just using their coach's information to coach our group. Was it good and did it help me? Absolutely. Was it the best thing for me? Probably not. I got injured a lot. It wasn't the best coaching for me. And then I did it by myself for several years after that. And then I finally hired a coach. And once I hired a coach that was specific for the goals that I wanted to achieve, I started to hit those goals. And, the first thing was I never really had a target to hit. It was just, I want to be as strong as possible. And that is the widest target possible. It's super, super easy to hit. right? Or you never hit it, I guess you could say, because it's so generic. I want to be strong as possible. That's a lifelong goal, right? And there's other avenues you can go down that I may or may not have gone down. When I hired my coach, we had specific goals, and we've hit most of those goals. Now, I've had roadblocks. I've had knee injuries. I've had back injuries. I've had pec injuries. I've had shoulder injuries. All sorts of things that have, kept me from hitting my very, very highest potential. But that being said, the coaching is great, and I'm actually hitting the goals that I want to hit, right? So is coaching a good thing? Absolutely, because you can run all those things by them, and you can have somebody to bounce it back and forth with. If you don't, it's just you talking at a wall or in the mirror and listening to yourself and deciding if what you're saying to yourself is going to get you to where you want to go. So 100%, I would say get a coach. The highest level people out there have coaches. The best people out there have coaches. It's not that crazy expensive. Get yourself a coach. It's going to make your life a whole lot easier. Powerlifting gear is the next thing I want to kind of talk about. So there's, in competition, there's classic raw and there's raw. So I'm just going to start with the first one, and that's raw. So what is raw? Raw is technically knee sleeves, belt, and wrist straps. So that's the equipment you can have on the platform, other than like your singlet, your shoes, your socks, and your shirt and stuff like that. Knee sleeves. They're like neoprene style. They slide over up the leg, and they go around the knee. Belt is going to be something that keeps the core nice and tight, and wrist straps obviously are going to wrap around the wrist to make sure those are nice and solid. Knee sleeves, they don't do a ton in my opinion. You can get ones that are pretty intense. I think Inzer probably has one of the best ones out there currently. I use some Strongbow right now, and I have SBDs as well. I like all three of those. Currently, I use all three of them. But anyway, so it slides over the leg, it covers the knee, it keeps the knee nice and warm, it gives you a little support, and in the hole, it stretches out a little bit and gives you a little bit more support there. And it also just gives you a little bit of mental stability, being like, I know I'm protected a little bit. The belt is going to help you keep your core nice and tight. It's going to allow you to breathe into that diaphragm and push out and create that nice abdominal pressure that we want without overextending the gut and potentially having hernias and stuff like that. So yeah, belts are 100% awesome. I would definitely recommend you use them for sure. Especially if you're using, I use my belt anything over about 75 or 80% of my 1 rep max on my squat and my deadlift. I don't use it on a bench. I know people that do use them on the benches. I just don't find that it helps me a ton, so I don't use it. Wrist straps help you keep your wrist straight when you're in the bench press. And I've seen enough people dump a bar on their chest or on the racks or whatever, and it's just one of those things. It's like it just helps you mentally think about less things. Like, I don't have to worry about my wrist folding over and dumping the bar because my wrists are so tight. It also just kind of gets a little bit of tension in there and helps you just be able to, power through a little bit more, in my opinion. So I used all three of those, and I think that they're really good for you. Classic raw is wrist wraps, belt, and knee wraps. So same idea as a wrist, but it's going to go over your knees. Now, I was classic raw for a lot of years. I used a lot of wraps, and I find that you definitely get more out of it if you do classic raw. The numbers in for the records and stuff like that are higher because you get more out of it for sure. The other aspect of it is I don't think it's super great on your knees. And I've had some knee issues, but if you think about your knee, the patella is sliding up and down in a groove in your kneecap, right? And then now you're taking this wrap and you're tightening the crap out of it, jamming that patella into the humerus and the tibia, and now you're asking it to slide under pressure. So I used knee wraps, for years and years and years, and I'm wondering if that might have caused some of my issues that I'm currently dealing with, but I don't know 100%. I know a lot of people that still use knee wraps. I really like the idea of knee wraps because you get a lot of support out of them, and they make you feel super confident, and they give you a little bit of a rebound out of the hole. But one of the aspects of competition with knee wraps is, especially nowadays, almost everything is raw, and they only give you 1 minute once they call platform ready to get up there and start your lift. So knee wraps take a minute to wrap them, and you don't want to sit there. It's like a give and take thing. You don't want to sit there with your knees wrapped super tight, because then your feet go numb, and you're like, I'm getting under this 500-pound plus whatever squat, and my feet are completely numb because my knees have been wrapped so long, and they feel like sausages underneath me because the blood flow is cut off, basically. And you don't want to give it too little time where you're rushing and stressing out before you go and do your lift. So it's a huge time commitment. You have to practice it a lot to get that down. Now, people can do it, and people have done it in the past. Obviously, I've done it and all that stuff. It's just an added stressor to me, especially nowadays when raw people are sitting there with their knee sleeves on, ready to go, and the meat's flowing nice and fast. Full equipment. So there's single ply and multiply. Single ply gear is a shirt and a squat suit and a deadlift suit, depending on if you have all three. Some people deadlift in their squat suit, and it's just like a single. So the bench shirt is like a half singlet with arm sleeves on it, and it's got a lot of material that goes from each arm over the chest plate to the other arm, and it acts like a spring loaded. As you're coming down, it creates tension, and it's creating like a spring-like mechanism to be able to rebound that weight up. Squat suit is something similar, but all that stuff's in the hips and in the glutes and all that stuff. So as you're squatting down, it's stretching out and tightening against your skin, adding the spring-like effect. So when you come out of the hole in the squat and the deadlift, it's going to add pressure and add that rebound effect. So it's a whole other game. Now, is it easier? Absolutely not. The first couple times I competed in full gear, so squat suit and bench shirt, and I've lifted in that type of stuff for several times. For like a year, I lifted in a squat suit and a bench shirt. You add more weight to the lift. So like back then when I was doing it, like my raw bench was like 265 max or something like that, maybe 270, and my shirted 1 rep max was like 390 or something like that. My 1 rep max squat was like 365, and I hit like a 500 or 485 or something like that in a squat suit. So it's not any easier. You lift more weights, and it's a completely different game, because you can't just show up at a meet, throw your gear on, jump on the platform when they call platform ready, and then just go for it. You have to weigh in. You have to make sure you're not overweight, because if you're too heavy, then your gear won't fit. If you're too light, then your gear won't fit, and it's not going to give you the right amount of rebound. It's a whole nother game, but it's awesome in its own game. It's in its own light, and it really helps lifters that have been injured and that are getting to their elder years in powerlifting. It helps them still stay in the game and lift and, not be in pain. Okay, competition. Let's chat about competition. So competition is where it's at, right? There's a platform. There's one rack. One person goes at a time, and so usually in like a local meet or state meet, there's 60 lifters total. Each lifter is in a certain flight. So it always starts with flight A, then it goes to flight B, then it goes to flight C. And most of the time there's a flight D. If there's 60 lifters, there's going to be a flight D. And it goes by weight classes, and then it also goes by like how much you're going to put on the bar. So if you're in flight A, because you're in a lighter weight class, flight B, you're going to be in a heavier weight class. Flight C, you're going to be in a heavier weight class. Flight D is usually the big people, the heavyweights. And then in your, just say you're in flight A. if your opening lift is heavier or is the heaviest, let's just say that, heaviest, you're probably going to go next to last, or you're going to be the last one. If you're somewhere in the middle and there's people that are heavier than you and there's people that are lighter than you, you're going to be in the middle. If you start out and you're the lightest lifter, you're going to be the very first one. Now, I've had the pleasure of being the very first lifter before. Unfortunately, it was a terrifying experience. No, it wasn't that bad, but it's definitely, people are always talking about, like, I don't want to be the very first lifter. Somebody's got to be the very first lifter, right? So just get over that and just let it happen. And then, so yeah, A goes. We start out with the squats. All flight A goes. They go one round, and then they start back at the top again. So if you're the number one and you're in flight A, you're going to go first. 15 people are going to go after you. 15 people are going to go after you. And then it's going to start all over again with you. And you're going to go, and then everybody else is going to go, and then you're going to start the third rounds. And then you're going to go from there. And then that's your flight is going to be done. Flight B does the exact same thing. So whoever's first in flight B is going to start. And they're going to go all the way through that rounds, all the way until squats are done. Then we change over to the bench press. Same thing. If you're in flight A in the bench press, if you're in flight A, you're in flight A, right? So you're going to go first again, most likely, depends on your weight. And then the same thing goes, they call it the round system. Same thing for deadlift. Once all that's done, then the competition's over. So that's basically how it works. Now, there's multiple different federations in powerlifting. I think there's like, I want to say 5 or 6 that are going on right now. Everybody does the exact same thing, squat, bench, deadlift. But do they do it slightly differently? Yeah, they do it slightly different. One federation uses different bars than the other one, and one doesn't allow drug-free one federation doesn't allow a non-tested genre, or whatever you want to call it, of the powerlifting. The one that I'm affiliated with, the USPA, they have non-tested and they have drug-tested. So if you are, if you're on specific drugs that they're talking about or whatever, you have to go in the non-tested. If you are a completely clean, no drugs, blah, 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 you go into the tested, variation of that. So that's how it works, basically. Super simple, but there's always, complications because humans made it, right? So there's all sorts of complications. So in competition, when you are going your very first time going, or your very first few times going, you don't want to worry about anything. You don't want to worry about weight cutting. You don't want to worry about what you're lifting. You don't want to worry about records. The only thing you want to do is you want to make sure that you can complete a squat, a bench press, and a deadlift in competition style, which is all the different referees looking at you and judging you and all that type of stuff. I didn't even get into that. There's 3 referees. There's a head referee that calls the platform and calls all the commands of the lift. And then there's 2 side referees. And all 3 referees are there to make sure that you're doing the lift, the discipline, in the order that they wanted to do with the rules that they've given out in the competition. And I'm not even going to get into those right now, because as a lifter, it's on you to really know, and you should be reading the rule book of your federation that you're going to lift in. So if you're in competition and you're looking and you have gotten a few under your belt and you're feeling pretty solid about that, go ahead and check out the records. So for USPA, you go to uspa.net, and then you go to the records, and you go to your state, and then you go to your age, and then your weight category. There's all those different things as well that we didn't even talk about. And then you can look and to see what the recorded records are, and then you can see how close you are to those. If you're close, I would say you should definitely be about 5 to 10% above those records to actually hit them on the platform. Sometimes people can be, pretty awesome and push themselves on the platform and get records, but they probably already hit those lifts or really close to those lifts in the gym. Now, you want to make sure that you tell all your referees that you're going for records and all that stuff. Otherwise, they won't have the right referees on the platform, and they won't be able to get those referees in the right spot so you can get those records. But there's state records, there's national records, and there's world records. So state level meets, which are just your local meets, you can break state records, and most of the time you can break national records if they have enough national referees. In Oregon, We have an abundance of national referees, so most meets that you're going to go to, you're going to be able to break national records. So world records, you cannot break world records unless you go to a national event or you go to a world event. Now, how do you go to those, right? So you have your state level meets, you have your national level meets, and you have your world meets. A local state meet, you don't have to have any credentials. You can sign up for that and you can just do it. A national meet, you have to have broken some sort of number that they've already depicted, which is in their federation's rule book somewhere. For weight class and each age class, you have to hit a certain number to be accepted into that level. Now, once you go to the world level, you have to have hit a certain number at a national meet and hit a specific number in order to go to that world's meet. So make sure that, you have to break some number. You might not have to go, depending on what federation you are, you might not have to go to a national meet to beat the number to get into the worlds, but you have to qualify at some point depending on the federation that you have that you're in order to get to the world meet. In the USPA, they have Team USA. How do you get on that? Well, you have to be super, super high on the DOTS list. Now, DOTS is a calculation, and I don't know who made it, but it's a calculation of body weight versus how much you've lifted, and they have some algorithm that gives you a score. You have to be really high on that list in order to be invited to be on Team USA. And that's pretty difficult from what I understand. You have to be a pretty elite level for them to be on the Team USA and go to Worlds and compete in that type of stuff. But yeah, that's pretty much the idea of powerlifting and what it all goes into. There's a lot to it. I mean, I just barely skimmed the surface, but it's pretty basic. There's just a lot of different outlying stuff and a lot of different stuff. But squat, bench, deadlift, tons of programs. Make sure you have one that's going to end up with some type of 1 rep max. Get yourself a coach. Find yourself a specialty gym. You can do it in a regular gym, but man, you're going to do so much better if you find a gym that's like equipped and, ready for you and ready for heavy weights, and nobody's looking at you like, oh my gosh, this person's going to break their back, because they've seen it, they've done it. Protect yourself with gear. I always say this to everybody, like, we're flesh, and iron is iron, and steel is steel, and it's going to be around. People are going to be lifting the weights that we're lifting probably far after we're gone out of the powerlifting world, because we break down and it really doesn't that much. Get yourself some gear, protect your body, join a competition, man. I mean, it is so much fun. I wasted so many years not competing because I was too chicken or too competitive or whatever you want to say, too much ego. Get in there and just do it. It's so much fun and you're going to love it. And it gives you some drive in life, right? Find a federation that works for you. There's many different federations, and they're not one's better than the other one. Everybody has their place, and they're great. All of them are great. I've competed in most of them, but I find USPA really, I enjoy that one, and I've gone really far down the rabbit hole on being a referee and all that type of stuff. And don't worry about what you weigh and don't worry about what you lift until you've gotten a few meets under your belt and you really feel like you want to drive it harder. And then you can start worrying about records, going to the next level and that type of stuff. But if you guys want more information, please shoot me an email or a text message, or just find us on Instagram, Ben Strength Warehouse, and message us over there, and we'd love to answer your questions. Anyway, I hope you guys have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon. Later.
Thanks for joining us on this epic journey of strength. If you liked this episode, please leave us a review and share with a friend. To stay connected, hit that subscribe button. All right, until next time, go heavy or go home.